Hello, and thank you for joining us today for today's Secrets to Greater Personal Impact webinar. I'm George Diaz, and I'm going to be your moderator today. It's a great pleasure to introduce Ann Friedman and Akim Novak to you. Before I introduce them, I want to announce that Akim and Ann will be taking some questions towards the end of the webinar. We'll be using our webinar questions feature in the Tools control panel. To make sure you can get a question to us, can you please test it out by typing the word hello into the question box? I'll just make sure that I'm getting the hellos through. I see the hellos are coming through, so apparently that's working fine, so we'll get started. I'd like to introduce Ann. Ann Friedman is an international presentation coach, communication expert, and app developer. As the founder and president of the Miami-based Speak Out, Ann has worked with hundreds of senior executives and businesses worldwide, including Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, and community-based organizations, helping them craft messages that ignite action and capture attention. Her book, Public Speaking for the Genius, will be published this fall. Akim Novak is an international authority on personal presence and interpersonal connections. His current book, Infectious: How to Connect Deeply and Unleash the Energetic Leader Within, has received acclaim from Fast Company, Entrepreneur, Forbes, and Publishers Weekly. Akim's Florida-based firm, Influence, has helped entrepreneurs and C-level business leaders around the world to show up with radiant presence and be more influential. Akim and Ann will speak each about 10 minutes, and we look forward to a lively exchange of ideas afterwards. The webinar will run about 45 minutes. Akim, why don't you get us started?
Hello, everybody. I am so delighted that you have joined us. I know we have friends from all over the world who are calling in, so welcome. And a special welcome to our friends from Miami. We have a hopefully surprise and welcome announcement for you toward the end of this webinar. When I look at this topic, greater personal impact, to me, greater personal impact means I have the deepest possible connection with somebody. And you've probably all seen that folks who connect really well with others are a lot more successful in business and in life. You know, they get commitment, they get things done faster. They also know how to navigate around obstacles with a measure of grace, and folks just want to connect and engage with those folks. And here's the tricky part that I'm going to walk us into in a moment. We rely so much on written communication, which has become shorter and shorter and faster. Like, nobody wants to receive a long email. I'm an avid tweeter myself, so I like tweets, but we know they're very short. I love to text. And what happens, and I often see folks who in their personal lives and their business lives speak as if they're writing an email. Everything is becoming more transactional, and while that's very efficient, it doesn't necessarily create great personal impact. George, could you advance the next slide? Because I'm not getting the next slide right now. And if not, there we go, I got it. You see a slide that says choose emotion, and there's some wonderful emotion words on there. I was always taught that if you want to connect with a more logical person, I should use more logical language, and if I want to connect with a more emotional person, I'm going to use more emotional language. And you know what? I don't believe that anymore. I feel like Madison Avenue has this all figured out. Like, when Madison Avenue wants us to commit to something in those 30-second television ads they do, there is no logic in there. Every image, regardless of product, is the same. These are images of families being healthy, having wonderful lives, because they know that on some deep level, that's the level at which we commit to something. So this is the kind of work I do with a lot of my clients, is one quick way to having a deeper connection with folks is to use language that has emotion in it. Good old-fashioned adjectives, stuff like "I'm excited to be here," "I'm eager to get started," "I am frustrated with this report," "I'm thrilled that we're talking," "I'm ecstatic that it's Friday." It's really about expanding our vocabulary and trusting that this language will create a deeper kind of connection. And what it does, by using the language, I'm actually become more emotionally connected to myself as well. So there are tremendous benefits. So I invite you to look at the difference between how you write, which is hopefully efficient, and how you speak in person, and don't throw the emotions out. As you look at the next slide, this is I used to be a professional theater director and acting coach. So I love the word intent and intention because it's become popular in modern culture because of authors like Wayne Dyer or so, who speak about the big life intentions. But I'm interested in how intention plays out in every moment, in a business conversation, in a meeting, when we want to have impact with a person. And because I was an acting coach, let me create some context for you around that. We tend to think that actors prepare for a part by learning the lines, and they do. That's a big part of the homework. But this is the deeper work that actors do. Actors will take a script and break it down into chunks, or what they call beats. And for example, if I was acting in a scene with my colleague Anne, who was on the call right now, I would think, how does my character want to impact Anne right now? And I would take that and translate it into an action verb. And what happens in that scene, instead of just talking to Anne, I say my words, but in my mind, I'm concentrated on this action verb. And what actors know is if that action verb is clear, and actors call it the objective, I'm using the word intent for our business language. If that is clear, it sharpens and clarifies the way my words come across. So please allow me to give you a business example. There are classic intentions that come into play in business all the time. For example, I might want to inspire you. I might want to motivate you. I might want to challenge you. I might want to provoke you. A lot of us stumble into conversations and the intents are sort of floating around, but we haven't articulated those. And folks who connect very well know they have chosen the language. It's in their mind. It's like a silent mantra that you say to yourself. And if I have, for example, a 45-minute meeting with Anne, there might be different intents at different parts of the meeting. But what I see as a coach all the time is that if I work with somebody who I feel is not fully focused, the moment you're able to articulate what the intent is and you hold it in your mind, you don't say it out loud, it's not something that you actually articulate, the way your language comes out is more focused, more impactful, and more engaging. And just a couple of tips around it, because actors know this. The best intents are the kind of intents you pick an action verb that really stimulates your brain. You can actually do some research and find synonyms and find a verb that's sexy for you, that you want to think about. That's the intent that you want. And it will really fuel your brain and focus you in a tremendously enjoyable way. So I invite you to play with that. As we move forward, there we go. I want to move us to one more slide. And this is the stuff that I think makes the biggest difference, but it can also be very challenging to talk about. You see the word introvert, extrovert, ambivert, univert. We have been told, because we follow a Jungian model of understanding energy, that we're either introverts or extroverts, or we're somewhere on the scale of introversion and extroversion. While those distinctions may be true, I don't find them very helpful. We limit our thinking about how we access energy, and the deepest level at which we have impact is the energy exchange with another person. So I love the word ambivert, which I cannot take credit for. Dan Pink, who's a wonderful author, came up with that and said, basically, if you want to have an impact on anybody, you better be an ambivert. You better be comfortable being the introvert and comfortable being the extrovert. The word univert I threw in there because much of the world has a whole other understanding of energy. In most cultures, there's a word for something that we call life force. And you notice we don't use life force in the United States. It's not part of our cultural thinking. But in India, you would talk about prana. In China, you would talk about qi. In Japan, you would talk about ki. And this is a universal life force energy that we all have. And what I want to invite you to contemplate is if folks who know how to access this have a significantly larger impact on other people because this energy is visceral and tangible. And the beautiful part is, and all of us can learn this, whether we're introverts or extroverts. So some of the techniques that you've probably all heard about, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, Alexander technique, acupuncture, are all ways in which we access the Qi. So my invitation to you is to get in the habit of find your own practice, because what works is different for different people. What works for me may not work for you. But find a practice where you access that energy, and you will immediately connect differently in your professional relationships. And I'm going to leave you with one little tidbit. As some of you who are listening may be familiar with NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and there's lots of wonderful content there, but one technique that I like that comes also from my work as a theater director is in NLP, these are called anchoring techniques. And anchoring techniques are like the things that we do to very quickly switch our state of being so we're in the best possible state of mind to engage with impact with another person. There are a bunch of different techniques. I'm going to share one with you that I use, and this is a little secret that I don't normally share with people. But if I have a meeting, for example, if I'm taking the elevator up to the meeting, I have those 15 or 20 seconds to make sure I'm in the best possible state of mind. So when I walk through the door, I'm ready to connect with that person. So this is my little, I call it self-talk. And I'm going to share mine with you, and notice yours should sound very different because my self-talk has language that works for me that may not work for you. But I say to myself, I am a vibrant vehicle of light and love. And I say to myself on the entire ride up. And again, it has key buzzwords that energize me. Vibrant, light, love, energetically change me. And when I walk out of the elevator, I feel differently than I did when I got in. And it makes me ready to connect with folks. And all of this is so easily practiced, and it's invisible, but it changes the way we relate to folks. I have lots more to share with you, but that has to happen in some other time because I'm so blessed to be here with my colleague Ann, who has wonderful things to share with you as well. So I'm going to throw it to Ann right now. Ann, take it away.
Thank you, Achim. I know our listeners are already feeling their personal impact growing thanks to the wonderful comments you've just shared with us, the wonderful advice. Well, there are two issues that I'm often asked about when it comes to public speaking and our personal impact. The first is, how can we appear as natural and confident as possible, even when we really don't feel that way? I'm going to share a few techniques with you that you can begin using right away to help you create this wonderful illusion. And the second challenge I hear about is trying to figure out the balance between talking about ourselves and our expertise to establish credibility and rapport and connection, and when it's best to talk directly to our audience about their needs and interests. I understand, by the way, that the slides are not projected, so if you're not seeing them, they're not there. Let's begin with the first question, which is, what is natural anyway? And I invite you to roll the clock back a few hours with me to earlier today. Think about your day as I go through these steps. Let's assume you've showered. You no doubt have a head-to-toe routine that you do now almost unconsciously. Starting at the top, you style your hair. Moving down a little bit, you shave or you put on your makeup. You choose your outfit, your jewelry, your belt. And then finally at the very bottom, you put on your shoes. The point here is that you're almost never really natural, are you? Heading out your front door and into the business world. Unless we live in your household, we'll never truly see the real you, the natural you. Through trial and error, you've created the image of a well-dressed, well-put-together professional, notwithstanding those occasional bad hair days. The truth is, there's nothing natural about being able to perform well in front of a group, whether it's a large audience, an office meeting, before a committee, or even in a class. good speakers, like the great actors Achim was talking about earlier, have internalized a set of practices that make them appear confident and comfortable, much like your morning routine. I'm about to share with you a structure that you can internalize to help you create more impact in public speaking so that you can appear more natural and confident on demand. In any presentation, from a 30-second self-introduction to a keynote, you have 4 basic parts. You have the opening, the pre-body, the body, and the close. Let me share with you briefly what those mean and how you can use these elements. A key part of the opening of your presentation that will help you seem natural, again, even if you're not really feeling this way, is to offer a greeting. Now, normally when you walk into a room, you would say, "Hi, Achim, hi, George, how you doing out there?" It just comes instinctively. But when we're nerve-wracked, when we're in front of an important group, sometimes that greeting goes out the window. So it's as simple as saying, "Hello, everyone." Doesn't have to be a formal "ladies and gentlemen," but remember to greet your audience. One of the most popular opening techniques, and there are 6, we won't have time to go through all of them today, but one of my favorites is to begin with a story or a personal anecdote. When you start this way, you immediately begin to break down the barriers between you and your audience. It's also a relaxing way for you because you're talking about something personal, something you've experienced, and it makes it a lot easier than trying to remember a fact or some kind of statistic. I don't recommend, however, starting with a joke because it's too easy these days to offend people. Everything is politically incorrect. And what you think is funny may not be. But that doesn't mean your personal anecdotes can't be hilarious or evoke some other kind of emotion. I encourage you to gather your stories into a collection and create your own story bank, either within your organization or just for you yourself to use in your upcoming presentations. As I said, we don't have time to go into the 5 other ways to open a presentation, but the key thing to remember is that whatever opening you choose, you want to practice it aloud until it seems natural. The next ingredient is the pre-body. This is a sexy mini overview of what's to come. It's best to pack your pre-body with teasers that make people want to listen for more. The next ingredient is the body. And the danger in the body, this is the content-rich part of your presentation, is what my daughter sometimes says to me when I'm telling her about something. She'll say, "Mom, TMI, too much information." The challenge is to sort out what your main ideas are, and I don't recommend more than 3 because most audiences' attention span today, as Achim mentioned earlier, our attention span is just shrinking. It's really, really short. So when we give an audience more than they want to hear, what happens? It's usually obvious from their body language. They're on their smartphones. They're looking at the ceiling. They're murmuring among themselves. It's a speaker's nightmare, isn't it? But it's an avoidable one when you keep your content well organized and as brief and as relevant as possible. And the last part is the closing. Achim referred to the idea of intent. Just as the goal of your morning is to get out of your home looking as terrific as possible, before you open your mouth, it's critical to have a specific goal in mind. That is, what will you be asking someone to do? What is your call for action? Where do you want to take the conversation or your audience? It's also a good idea to do a quick recap of what you covered before you go into your call for action. So bottom line, the secret to feeling natural, the antidote to not feeling natural or feeling uncomfortable, is to employ the hidden structure of public speaking, the 4-part head-to-toe equivalent of your morning ritual. Plan a greeting and an opening set of remarks. Think through a brief overview of what you're going to tell them. Keep your main points. Remember the too much information admonition of my daughter. And end on a deliberate, planned note. Remember, you didn't learn to get dressed and look as sharp as you do now overnight. Mastering the 4-part public speaking structure may take a little time too, but I promise it will be well worth the effort. Now let's go briefly into the second question I get asked all the time. When do I use I? When do we use we? And when do you speak directly to your audience? At the University of Florida, where I studied journalism and communication, and afterwards, when I was a working journalist and freelance writer, you are expected to leave yourself out of a story. You see this on the news today. Most news broadcasters never use the word I. They're reporting on what happened. You're supposed to be neutral and invisible. What I felt about a particular issue or situation wasn't important. It was all about reporting on what he said or she said, not what Ann said. But it's different for you as a business and community leader because you are the expert and your know-how, your experience, and your recommendations are in demand. At the same time, it's a question of balance, isn't it? While sharing relevant experiences can be enjoyable and help capture your audience's interest, too much talking about yourself can turn off an audience. You've probably been to meetings filled with success stories. Some of the speakers impress you with their credentials and their accomplishments, but it gets boring, doesn't it, after a while when they say, oh, I did this and I did that and then I did this. It's like a resume cover letter that you get where every paragraph begins with the word I. You know that person is either inexperienced, egotistical, and probably not a good candidate. Then there's the question of how to use the pronoun we. Kings and queens have traditionally referred to themselves as, they say, the royal we. But I think it's okay to use we, especially if you're chairing a board of directors or an association and you're speaking on its behalf. It's a good idea to use we. Otherwise, you could appear egotistical, ego-driven, that is, not really a team player. Many business owners talk about their enterprise using we or our, and so do the leaders of community organizations. It's much better, and it appears to be more natural. And finally, there's the magical word, which is you. Using the word you switches an audience on, especially when there's a benefit attached to what you're saying. You're going to begin to feel more and more in control and have more personal impact when you plan and practice your public speaking. And you'll be ready for more of those wonderful unplanned speaking opportunities too by remembering to envision that 4-part outline I talked to you about earlier. When you use the word you as you're pointing out a problem or a pain your audience might be experiencing, you'll also command more attention. Your anxiety and fear will begin to fade away the more you replace those negative feelings with more positive emotions and practices. So to sum up, you can appear natural and confident. You can have much more personal impact when you internalize the 4-part structure in your planned and impromptu speaking situations. Remember this key idea. Even though you are the speaker, it's really not about you, is it? You can win an audience over talking a bit about yourself and your own experiences and your teams and your companies, but at the end of the day, they'll only care about you. They'll only listen to you willingly and enthusiastically if you're helping them or entertaining them. And there's a lot more I'd love to share with you, and we will in days ahead. But for right now, Achim, I think you've got some exciting news for our listeners, don't you?
Well, first of all, thank you, Ann, and I'm really looking forward to some questions and an exchange of ideas because we just scratched the surface. But for our friends in Miami, on July 18th, Ann and I few times a year do a program called Real Impact, where we dive really deep into some of the ideas that you just heard. And we have a lot of fun with it, but most folks find it also very transformational. So if you are in Miami, come and join us, and you can go find out more at realimpact.co, which is a website just for this program. But I'm going to throw it back to George right now and see if we have any questions for Ann or me, and let's chat.
Yes, we do have some questions. We have a number of them. Let me start off with the first one, and that one is, what is the best way to keep my audience engaged in content that they might traditionally find boring?
Ann, do you want to take that?
Sure, that's a great question. My philosophy is that there's absolutely nothing that has to be boring, even though some subjects seem that way. The challenge is to weave in the facts with personal anecdotes or relevant information. For example, a lot of financial planners are talking about, when they talk about money, they get so heavy into the trends that they forget to make it relevant. So one of the best ways is to take a complex area and personalize it. Bring in a group that the audience may be familiar with or a practice, and take it from its very high level down to earth. Achim, do you have an idea on that?
No, nothing to add. That was awesome.
Great. We have another question. If I don't consider myself impactful, is this something I can really learn?
Well, the question about whether or not I would say that's the story about yourself that's probably not helpful. I mean, all the tips that Ann are talking about are tips about, and I love what Ann said about going beyond worrying about what we're doing right to really going to our audience, whoever that is, and relating and connecting with them. So the examples I gave you are really emblematic of the work I do with all my clients. They're usually very senior level business executives. So we play with language. The moment we have a broader set of vocabulary, we are more impactful. We play with intention, and we play with energy. One thing, for example, that I coach a lot of folks on, and if I were working with Ann, and if Ann thought she wasn't impactful, I might say to Ann, you know what, Ann? What would it be like if you gave me 20% more of yourself? And Ann might go, well, what do you mean by that? And that's a fair question, right? And I'd say, well, what do you think that is 20% more? And Ann might say, do you mean 20% more passion? I said, sure, let's try that. Or 20% more enthusiasm, let's try that. 20% more energy. And then we just try it. And suddenly another part of ourselves comes out, and we begin to get to see more of who Ann is, and we don't have to. The 20% is just a hook into bringing out parts of you that are more impactful. So these are the kind of things I play with my clients all the time.
And if I can add to that, one of the things that I look for along, and I love what Achim says about identifying that emotion that you have inside of you and bringing it out, is I encourage you to look at the actual choice of words that you've made, the language. Because sometimes we think we're supposed to sound like professors when we speak. And in fact, the language itself isn't comfortable for us. So if we look for simpler language that's easier to say, that's more genuine, it's easier for us to emote and to make the kind of impact that we want to make.
Good. We have another question. This one's interesting. Do you recommend improv classes as a prep tool?
Let me take that one, since I'm the former theater director and acting coach. Yes, I'll take it. And I remember in our industry, there's a publication called Training Magazine in the training industry, and it's a wonderful monthly publication. And just a few years back, they were interviewing 7 public speakers who did a lot of speaking. And they were asked, so what kind of advice would you give folks on how to further develop yourself? And they had many wonderful things to say. But the one thing that all 7 said is take an acting class. And the beauty of an acting class is it develops you as a whole being, so you are more fully in touch with yourself. I use the word, you're expanding your personal range. And your personal range, the larger it is, the more fluid you are in different social situations. And if I were to choose what type of acting class, absolutely, I would take an improvisational class. It's really fun. It sets us free. It's the most joyful way of personal development. So I wholeheartedly support that notion.
If I could just add to that, it may be hard to believe, but a zillion years ago, I also took one. It was when I was first starting my career, and I was making the transition from being a print journalist, a newspaper journalist, to writing speeches and presentations. And so I took an improv class to get a better understanding of the difference between writing for the eye and writing for the mouth. And so I totally agree. It was a huge transition for me. I remember one class where we spent a whole hour just saying hello. You can imagine like 40 people just saying hello with different intonations. It does liberate you, and it's a wonderful technique to help bring out the best in you. I totally encourage it.
And I had one more thought as you were talking, Anna. And it relates to all the public speaking questions, because Anna and I both spend a lot of time coaching very senior business leaders. And the question always is should you have a script that you read, or should you speak from bullet points and sort of free flow a little bit more, which is more improvisational? And in my case, there are some situations, like I coach, CEOs of companies who have to do their quarterly investor calls, and there it is important to stick to the script, so we rehearse the script. But in almost any other situation, the standard I would set for you is get comfortable speaking to the main points. They may be on a slide deck, or they may live in your brain, and in between, you're free flow and trust that you get from one point to the next. If you forget something, big deal, nobody will notice, but you will come across as a thinking, alive person in the moment and not a rehearsed robot. And if we come across as robotic, we are not connecting with people, and we do not have impact.
Very good. You answered the next question, which is, should I carry a script or should I go with short points?
Well, let me add one more thing, because and I think Ann and I are different as coaches here, so it's wonderful. If I were coaching you, I would be, let's say you have to deliver an important speech for the first time. I would expect you to first time through show up in front of a senior audience without notes in your hands. And Ann can disagree with me. I would, if you have slide decks, the main talking points are there. If you're citing research or data that you don't want to mess up, I would say go over, grab a piece of paper that has that and read from it, but then get it out of your hands. It's about walking through the fear of fully showing up and getting rid of all crutches. So I will not let you work with index cards or stuff in rehearsal, yes, but in a senior level, high stakes meeting, that would not be okay.
And I think it's okay to have a one-page cheat sheet, especially the first time. But I totally agree with Achim. You want to liberate yourself from paper. I think the first time anybody does something is the hardest, and we do have to kick ourselves in the tush and get ourselves out of our comfort zone. I'm not saying it's easy. Even doing webinars for the first time is a challenge, because you're going from one kind of speaking platform to another. But I think it's okay to give yourself that piece of paper. You just don't want it, as I agree with him, you don't want it to be a total crutch, but sometimes just the comfort of having that piece of paper near you takes some of the anxiety away. If you've really rehearsed, if you really know it, you won't need it. But I think it's okay the first time. After that, you really probably won't need it again.
Great. This is a question for both of you. Is humor a skill that can be learned?
Let me take that first, Anne, because in my first book, I wrote a book called Power Speaking, The Art of the Exceptional Public Speaker. I really went into that a lot, and because I used to actually teach classes on this before I had my business. And one thing I learned, and I really believe this is, I support all of Anne's cautions around humor that she talked about. But another part is about sort of understanding what kind of humor style is comfortable for you. I'm just going to use myself as an example. I'm not really good at telling prepared jokes. Some people do that very well. My strength of humor, I believe, is in the moment responding spontaneously to something that happens, and I find that I am humorous in a natural, unscripted way. And I've learned to trust that ability. So if I'm speaking for an hour somewhere and something funny happens, I will use that opportunity and not ignore it. So that spontaneous type of humor works really well for me. But I stay away from stuff that's out of my comfort zone because I don't want to come across as forced or fake. What do you think, Anne?
Well, I think that just like knowing what to reach for in the closet, some people are more naturally aesthetic. They just know what clothes work together well. I think that some humor is inborn, and the rest of us can learn to be more humorous. I believe that we need humor almost everywhere because some people are so serious today. You don't want to do something that doesn't feel natural. But some people, when you're telling a story, especially if it's something that's happened to you and you're poking fun at yourself, the humor is going to emerge, and it isn't necessarily contrived. But some humor is. And sometimes I found by accident that I'll say something and people will laugh. And then you realize, oh my God, did I really say that? As long as it's not putting anyone down, the humor is, I think, a vital part of the way we communicate. And when we're too serious too long, we're going to lose each other. So to answer the question, you can learn to be more humorous. Listen to what you like in the way other people do it, and begin to find your own humorous voice. And you can have it also. We need more of it in the world, I'm convinced.
I agree. That was well said, Anne. Thanks.
Great. We have time, I think, for one more question here. Let's see. Do you have any tips if you start to feel your audience is drifting or if the energy in the room starts to drop?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
The big variable for me with this one is the audience size. But when I think very often we feel like if we are the main presenter or speaker that we have to do all the work alone. So I would say ask a question, ask it quickly, get out of the idea that you have to make it work on your own, turn it into a conversation. Even with audiences of up to 60, 70, 80 people, that's relatively easy to do. As we get larger than that, then just the mechanics of hearing people gets complicated. But if you lose the audience, ask a question that warrants a genuine response, not a like, are you having a good time, which is just what I call a fake question that gets you a cheer, or have you seen this before, the yes or no. No, ask a question that's relevant, that opens the door to engagement, and suddenly you're all creating the experience together, and the audience is actually doing all the work for you, and you'll find a way of linking the answers back to your prepared messages, and suddenly there's a beautiful flow of energy that happens. So give it up to the audience and allow them to help you out.
I agree with that, and I think it also, in addition to the audience size, I think the length of your presentation is a factor too. If you have if you're doing a training or you have a keynote that's 45 minutes, a longer presentation, there is a more natural ebb and flow of the energy. Despite your best efforts, it's hard for an audience to pay attention continuously. As I mentioned earlier, and I've found myself, the attention span is just shrinking because of all the media and technology. So asking questions is a really good way, but also as you plan your presentation, plan it so that every few minutes, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every chunk, you have a way that you know from experience will fire up the energy in that audience. Maybe it's a story, maybe it's a question, maybe it's an example. But if you can pre-plan your presentation where there are spikes built in, you may not lose your audience. On the other hand, just because people are sitting for a long time, that energy flow can go. And the idea of asking questions to get people stimulated again really does work.
Great. Well, with that, we're coming to the end of our presentation time. We actually have another 50 seconds, both of you, if you want to just say final words, and we'll sign off.
I just want to remind you, those of you who are in Miami or in South Florida, we'd love for you to join us on July 18th at the Miami Beach Cinematheque for our one-day transformational workshop, Real Impact. And again, you can find more information at our Real Impact website, which is realimpact.co.co. Achim?
Yeah, just because I was an acting coach for a long time, I want to invite you to, first of all, think about the fact that whatever you're doing, you're already doing well. But all that we all do in life is continue to explore our range. And the more range we have, the more fully we can show up in different situations and adapt. So everything that Ann and I talked about today is in the spirit of expanding your range and having more fluidity and flexibility, and then having impact actually becomes a lot more fun.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We will be sending out a link to the recording and the slide deck. Thank you for attending. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.